a nominal definition is basically just a convention to use certain terms. A realist definition of terms refers, or thinks that a definition refers to real things in the world, either socially constructed or not. This is also still an open fact. If it's a real thing in the social world, then the question is whether the institutional fact of race is still reducible or not. But besides these, let's say, ambiguity still in the definition that Du Bois offered, the main thrust is that it went against the dominant current of a pure biological definition of race and introduced a social constructivist idea of race, which is important then for making it an object of study also for a discipline like sociology. This brings us also to his probably most sociological work. This is the Philadelphia study I had mentioned from 1899, which is a founding document, you could say, of urban sociology. So the background of the study is that Philadelphia, long time the largest city in the United States, had also the largest black population, and was at the same time a laboratory of urban reform. So it had a very vivid reform movement, many associations. The progressivists were quite strong in this city, but yet it was also a segregated city despite its high home ownership rate. Du Bois then spent 15 months actually living in the 7th Ward, the focus also of his studies. So in a way, the origin also of participant observation in sociology. Du Bois did not invent this genre. So at the same time, Charles Booth had written a huge almost encyclopedic work on poverty in London. So that was an established genre which Du Bois also applied then for the US context. And it's also close to a genre then that the Hull House scholars around Jane Addams then practiced in the United States. We will see this in the next lecture as well. The study was not the only one, but I mentioned that Du Bois was the founder of something like the Atlanta School also of sociology and served as a blueprint then for further studies of this type. It is an early kind of what has later been labeled community study, where scholars live in a certain community for a very long time and document everything that they can get a hold of, a very fact-based, ethnographically rich kind of study that became the main genre, I would say, of the later Chicago school in the 1930s and still in the 1950s. So empirically, this involved, nowadays we would say a multi-method or a mixed method, even design, where Du Bois himself conducted up to 2,500 interviews. He used a survey also, participant observation. He used the census material of the city. So real mixed method design. So let's take a look at least briefly at the key findings. So Du Bois finds already back then problematic disintegration of families, black families we are talking of, also due to the traumatic experience of slavery in the history of the families. Then in the 1890s, in the European context, Cesare Lombroso was an Italian criminologist who defended very strong biological ideas of crime. Yeah, so he tried to establish a correlation between biological characteristics such as how long your nose is, how big your skull is, and so on, with certain types of crimes that are committed. So that, I don't know, murderers, for instance, are always of a certain stature, always have certain facial characteristics, and so on. And so again, Du Bois wrote against the strong biological determinism of social facts, in this case, crime, and basically shows that a crime is much more produced not by these individual, let alone biological characteristics, but rather by neighborhood and economic conditions. And also by the stigma that is carried with these traditions. So he's an early defender also of the stigma theory of deviant behavior. Also, an interesting methodological take of Du Bois is to compare the African American population to other immigrant groups who were also at the margin of American society, notably the second wave of immigrants coming from Southern and Eastern Europe. Yeah, he often uses this immigrant analogy to, yeah, if you want a control for, let's say, this fact of immigration and similar economic conditions, to better describe the idea of the color line. Du Bois, as a social reformer, looks also at institutions that might sort of make the social conditions better, and identify churches as very important for the neighborhood integration. Last but not least, when you take a look at the book, it is also a case of early urban geography and sociology, in that there are many really detailed maps that display census information, that display really block by block the different social characteristics of the 7th ward. And on a more theoretical level, Du Bois sees again sort of human agency and the power struggles as being more important for how the city looks like than abstract ecological processes. So we will see in the next lectures about the Chicago school that school had the idea of city development as being basically a biological fight for competitive niches. So a very abstract, determinist ecological processes as underlying city development. Du Bois again highlights human agency and, yeah, the struggle, for instance, to build a certain neighborhood in a certain way. All right, so with that, key works in early urban sociology, let me conclude here with summarizing some of the main features of Du Bois sociology that also will reappear in the Chicago school. So first of all, as you may have seen, Du Bois has a strong empiricist notion of the social sciences as being about generating what he calls a mass of facts, with the idea to study also social regularities. So in that struggle between the German historical school that wants to study singular facts and the more, let's say, law-like approaches, then he takes a middling position. Yeah? And this is in particular because he sees also what he calls the deeds of men, so human action, as the basic and the cornerstone of societies, and takes a, let's say, strong non-deterministic notion of these social regularities. Yeah. So they have exceptions, they can be changed. but yet they are studied also by sociology. Yeah, so this also makes Du Bois different from Weber. Weber is agnostic about this discussion in philosophy between the free will and the determinist proponents. Here Du Bois is on the side of seeing human agency and free will as yeah, sort of the root of chance events, and hence against deterministic worldviews. Due to his influence of the German historical school, he is also favoring this Verstehen, this understanding of intentions tradition in sociology, and yeah, is against sort of law-like explanations of human actions, as yeah, for instance, in Beard's Rise of American Civilization, a book where this is made very strong. So I mentioned already that Du Bois is a moral realist, so he thinks that the social world is made up of moral facts. Yeah, so so if someone says, for instance, this is a wrong action, this is an ethically, morally wrong action, then this is not just a way of saying, but it refers to a fact in the world which is a wrong action, and sociologists can observe something like good or bad kind of actions, and the study of sociology is also about these kind of facts. Last but not least, we saw that methodologically Du Bois introduces community studies as a genre, and himself made use of both interviews, census statistics, survey methods, so an early defender of mixed methods design, and yeah, considers the social sciences not just as a collection of singular facts, but aiming for empirical generalizations. All right, so we leave it here and go on in the next lectures with then the Chicago School. Have a great day.